Unbelievable. I hope you don't mind the background noise from my air conditioner. I'm watching this series of videos by Eric Lethwaite. This one is Shaping Things to Come, 1972. The previous one was something else. And the guy is like totally brilliant, and he's an inspiration to listen to him. Well, I figured out how Tesla, the functional mechanics of why William Lyne quotes Tesla in saying that for every 200 pounds of iron added to his special generator, 1 horsepower output was added to the already ensuing output. It's a short. It's a magnetic short. When you short a magnetic field, you increase its speed, and you make it appear as if there's less resistance to the flux pathway of that magnetic field. Well, magnetism is the translation or the translatable equivalent of current. So effectively, for every 200 pounds of iron that Tesla was adding to the mass of iron surrounding his circuit, but magnetically coupled to it, namely to the core within his coils, he was effectively reducing the temperature of the wire carrying the current in those coils, which effectively is the equivalent of supercooling the coils and reducing their resistance towards zero resistance. Because imagine, if you will, you've got this mass of iron surrounding a coil, and you have a lot of convective cells. And this is what I got out of the previous video to this. Let's go backwards so I can give you the name of that previous video. The Circle of Magnetism, 1968. It's a great video. And he shows bringing 2 bar magnets together with 1 piece of steel between them and 2 pieces of steel between them. And 1 piece replicates the pole arrangement at one end, let's say the North Pole. So the South Pole, the piece of steel creates a South Pole against the North Pole of the permanent magnet and creates a North Pole on the opposite side, so that he can still bring his 2 bar magnets together, north and south, and everything's fine. But the minute he puts in a second piece of steel, everything goes in opposition, and the 2 bar magnets of north and south pole facing each other now want to repel each other. Why? Because he has 2 convective cells, each one in each piece of steel rotating in the opposite direction in order to match, or I should say meet up with each other. So the steel is accommodating convectivity of flux, so that 1 piece of steel is rotating one way against the north pole of one permanent magnet, while the other convection of magnetic flux is rotating in the opposite direction against the south pole of the other permanent magnet, and they go and they meet together ever so nicely because that's the way they want to flow. They want to flow like 2 gears that are meeting together, and they don't want to strip each other of the teeth of those gears, and so they rotate in opposite directions. But opposite directions means opposition of polar arrangement, and that means that the 2 pieces of steel, each one stuck to its own respective north pole of one permanent magnet and the south pole of the other permanent magnet, now those 2 pieces of steel want to repel each other because they have like poles. Really bizarre, huh? This is so bizarre. But when you work it out on paper and see that magnetism and the polar arrangement of magnetism is merely an arrangement of convectivity. That's all it signifies, is the polar arrangement of convective flow of magnetic flux. So if we have a piece of steel, tons of steel surrounding a coil, magnetically coupled to the core so that it can pick up the phase relation and frequency and charge, the magnetic charge of that core, of that coil, now it imparts a whole mass of tiny little convective cells outside the core. Because the core is where the strength of the magnetism is at its most concentrated state. And out here, it's not so concentrated. It's free to do whatever it wants to without the limitation of a coil telling it what to do, where to do it, how to do it, what direction to do it, and what phase to do it in. What frequency to do it. It's not there to micromanage the magnetic flux behavior within that mass of steel. And so it's going to create its own little convective cells of motion, acting like little gears going in opposite direction to each other. And without the resistance of the pressure of the voltage of the magnetic, the equivalence of voltage, of electrical voltage translated over to magnetic flux, whatever that happens to be, the equivalence of the voltage acting as a regulator, acting as a strict authoritarian, you got to do this or else. And the higher the voltage is, the more strict is that regulation. But the further away you go from the coil, the less strength is that magnetic equivalent to voltage by the square of the distance. So now you get convective cells out in the perimeter, way far away from the coil, doing their own thing, like, oh no, we're not going to be regulated by any voltage telling us what to do, what the frequency of that magnetic changing AC magnetic field is happening in the coil. We're going to do whatever we want to do. True, we get our initial stimulus by being magnetically coupled to the core of the iron inside the coil, but by the time you go to the outer reaches of our little solar system of magnetic convective circles of magnetic flux, circulation, we can do whatever we want to do. And so we do it, and we do it at a rapid, more and more rapid pace of revolutions per unit time, the further away we go from the coil. And that's going to have an impact on the convective cells towards the interior of the coil. They're going to want to act as a braking force, that's true, but if you get enough mass far enough away from the coil, they're going to act as an accelerative force, working against the braking action more towards the interior center point of the coil, speeding up the magnetic flux rate within the center of the coil, which is going to impact the magnetic flux of the coil and impact the rate of current, the amperes, the amplitude of amperes flowing inside that coil, the electric field traveling inside that coil. So the mass of magnetizable iron, the more and more we add, is going to accelerate, or increase, I should say, the amplitude of the electric field traveling inside that coil, as if the resistance of the coil had gone down, as if we had supercooled it towards absolute 0 Kelvin degrees. Isn't that the most amazing little trick of physics you can imagine? Now we pay for it with massive iron. Nothing's for free, right? But what magnetism? We didn't magnetize the steel. We let the coil do that. So is it costing us energy? No. You know why? Because Tesla learned how to do this. You don't put a high current, low voltage energy through that coil. You do the opposite. You send high voltage, low current through that coil, and maybe you do pulses and not a continuous thing, regardless of all the little tricks. And maybe you use a high frequency, and maybe you separate the voltage from the current by 180 degrees phase separation. Whatever numerosity of tricks you use, you employ as many as you can think of that actually work together as a coherent harmony, and you end up with hardly any cost of energy to run the darn thing, and yet it comes out with an overflowing quantity of energy greater than what you put into that coil. And all because you paid for it with the mass of magnetizable iron that was not pre-magnetized by anything. It's just a lump of iron, several tons in mass, surrounding that coil and magnetically coupled to the iron inside that coil. That's the beauty of that trick. And when you think about it logically, with the help of Eric Lithwaite, it really starts to make sense. Without any other physical evidence, just the inspiration of Eric's videos. Another Eric. Eric must be a good luck charm between the two of them. Now I'm getting hokey pokey on you, right? But whatever. I think it's fortuitous they're both called Eric. We could knight them both, two Sir Erics. Anyway, I don't know if Eric Dollard would like it too much, but whatever. I wouldn't mind knighting the fellow if I could. If I was Queen Elizabeth III, a little gay maybe to be able to do that. Okay, Prince Charles II. Wait a minute. No, that wouldn't work. Prince Vinny I. Okay, whatever. So as long as it works, because I think both of them need to be knighted. Sir Eric's. They're just phenomenal, brilliant geniuses, and taking something so convolutedly mysterious and making it so easy for a lame brain like me to come up with the theoretical explanation of why William Lyne is not telling a fib, not making up a chain yanker to to see if we have a sense of humor and actually be taken seriously. Because this is serious physics, the convectivity of magnetism. And what happens when you get further away from the influence of a coil, of an electromagnetic coil of wire? It's amazing. It's truly amazing. I can't help but be inspired. You know, it's like electromagnetic theory, or electrodynamic theory, I should say, or electrostatic theory for whatever, electricity or non-electricity, electrical reactance, whatever. The whole subject matter is just a subject of wow. Just when I think I'm bored, you know, and I got nothing better to learn, you know, I've learned it all, now I'm bored. Oh no, you haven't. There's more to come. And it's more fantastic than what you knew already. So that is enough to end on.